Shalom, greetings from Jerusalem. I'm Jonathan Hessen, and this is TV7's Editor's Note. And this week, we will resume our broadcast. We do start our TV7 Israel news broadcasts on Wednesday, when we will resume our regular schedule. Before that, we will air a couple of programs. On Friday, we will have our monthly Powers in Play, and there are many opportunities or many new programs in the pipeline that are going to be produced in the next several days. I will point out that we underwent a significant upgrade of our systems in the control room and many other aspects, and I deeply appreciate all of you, to include yourself, if you are a supporter and have stood by TV7 Israel in making this possible. It's going without saying that we are in the process of upping our quality, as it was put to me. So thank you again. And in today's edition, we are going to focus on a whole variety of issues. Obviously, there is still one Israeli hostage, remains of a hostage in Hamas captivity or Palestinian Islamic Jihad captivity in the Gaza Strip. To date, he's been held by the terrorist organizations there since October 7th of 2023. We are very hopeful to see his remains returned to his family for proper burial in Israel as soon as possible, since Israel will not enter into Phase 2 despite growing pressures, including from the United States, on Jerusalem to enter into Phase 2, even if the body of Shvili is not returned to Israel. And that is something that there is much pressure here in Israel to refuse, no matter what, to ensure that all hostages who were brutally murdered on October 7th and taken away from their families, from their loved ones, from Israel for so many months and days ago, will be returned promptly. Now, with me today is my dear friend and colleague, Ambassador Danya Ayalon, Israel's former ambassador to Washington, a deputy foreign minister, and a long list of other positions over the years. It's great to have you with me, Danya.
Thank you so much. It's always good to be with you. And first off, a belated but never out of date Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and to all the loyal viewers of TV7. And keep up the good work. It's very, very important what this station and you and all your guests do.
I deeply appreciate that, Danya, and indeed a happy new year, a blessed new year, a better year than last year.
Yes,
we are hopeful for, and with God's grace, I am looking forward to seeing that materialize. But unfortunately, there are plenty of complexities. Let's start with Gaza. It seems like there is not a strong response, or rather the momentum that was pushing this process forward is slowly losing track, and it seems like that Washington, despite having a couple of envoys engaged on this portfolio, are not as adamant and engaged as they used to be.
Yeah.
What are we to take out of that, and can the lack of attention span to this specific issue realize the breakthrough necessary to bring about an unknown future? Because it is unknown. It's still very fluid.
Yeah. Well, Jonathan, obviously Israel has the upper hand in Gaza. Gaza is not what it used to be a year ago, certainly not what it used to be 2 years ago. A lack of attention may be even beneficial to Israel, provided, and I hope that we do have the capability to look for where the body of Egvili is in Gaza, and I think this will be very important for us to bring him home, to bring a closure. This will be the real closure of the tragedy of the 7th of October. So Israel is certainly headed that way. Meanwhile, when we look more strategically, I think Hamas has never been in any worse conditions. Not only it's losing ground Although there are who will say that in the 47% that Hamas controls, they're trying to regain power. But I think, Jonathan, this is short-lived because they are very much dependent on two things. First of all, what will the United States do and the coalition, whether a stabilization force will be established, whether a reconstruction will start, and most importantly, what Israel will do. And here I think Israel has none of the constraints we had before. During Biden, when he didn't want us to go in, not in Rafah, not in deeper into Gaza. Today, we are very much capable of doing it. First of all, we took out most of at least 50% of all the tunnels, which was the real strategic threat and the real strategic weapon of the Gazans. And I do see a situation, Jonathan, that Israel does go into Gaza with the absence of any agreement on a stabilization force or not even a governing body. Right now, it's in a limbo. And indeed, the Turks and the Qataris are trying to push the force, but there are no takers. And Israel will not allow Turkey and Qatar to, certainly they will not be there by themselves, but as long as no other country moves in, Israel has the de facto, the security control.
And the veto power also on
Absolutely.
the involvement. I do hear a lot of reports about Turkey not only trying to be part of it, but trying to also control the narrative on whether or not they get to enter or not. Much of that is disinformation, from what I understand. President Trump does have a unique relationship with President Erdogan, but it seems that in Ankara there's much skepticism towards this relationship.
Yes.
They're untrusting of Washington. And that is, despite this so-called unique relationship, it seems like the two sides do not necessarily trust each other.
Right.
And this goes also for Washington versus Ankara. Not to forget that in the last round, President Trump sanctioned the Turks on a whole host of issues, to include the procurement, of course, of the S-400. Congress is refusing to grant the Turks re-entry into the program of the F-35 stealth fighter aircraft. It doesn't seem that the White House is able to convince Congress to allow them to re-enter.
Yes.
And this is the issue. It's not only the S-400, right? So there are two parts to this story. And the Turks are therefore also looking at advancing a lot of their interests, including in expanding their influence. And we do see this expansionist process to much of what used to be under the influence of the Ottoman Empire, going all the way to Somalia. Before the British were in Somaliland, or the Italians in Jubaland and Puntland, which is southern Somalia, or Djibouti, which was the French Somalia, right? All this area was part of the Ottoman Empire.
Yes, and it seems like, with this attempt of Erdogan, almost single-handedly, to relive the Ottoman wings and power and influence, this day and age, it's too much for them to chew. I mean, they're trying to swallow more than they can chew, basically. And meanwhile, they have a major flank in the eastern Mediterranean area with the Greece and with the Cyprus, which, by the way, the Greek lobby in Washington is quite powerful. So if you combine together the Israeli lobby and the Greek lobby, it's quite a formidable hurdle for Erdogan to overcome, notwithstanding...
Despite the Qatari involvement there?
Yes, despite of the Qatari involvement. And, the Qataris are pretty much for themselves. And
they throw a lot of money into Washington.
Oh, too much.
They're trying to control Washington.
Absolutely. The $400 million plane that they gave personally to Trump. On top of that, the entire PR. They have the best PR, political PR lobbyists in Washington, D.C. They have put $6 billion into the academia, into major American universities. But still, I think at the end of the day, the money will not be able to buy them, as we say, respect. And there's a lot of apprehension with the Qataris. And the Qataris have enough on their plate to fight for their own image than to throw or to waste political capital on somebody else, including Erdogan. I think in this, and you talked about the F-35, I think in many ways Erdogan missed the plane by actually taking his time to return the S-400.
Literally and metaphorically.
I think, yes, absolutely. So if we go, what would be the ramification for us in Gaza? If he has to decide, in his priority list, the F-35 comes much higher than Turkish troops in Gaza. So the Turks have a lot on their plate. They're very busy. They are really, I think, overstretched. I mean, you mentioned, of course, Africa and the Horn of Africa and, Europe and the Mediterranean. It's also in the Eastern Asia. They're also trying to move, sometimes quite aggressively, to the detriment of Russian interests. So Erdogan has no friends. And I think everybody has gotten his numbers and nobody trusts him, which is really something that we should make better use of.
One of the things that I think are important to highlight is that, yes, they are out of the game when it comes to the F-35s, but they're not out of the game when it comes to the Typhoons or the Eurofighters. Right. And they have procured just recently, when British Prime Minister Keir Starmer visited Turkey, he did sell basically some 20 aircraft, sophisticated aircraft. And it became public knowledge that the Turks responded to a couple of questions in a briefing by saying, yes, our procurement is to balance the regional air power with a threat reference being mentioned is Israel. And Israel is becoming a threat reference, which is a dangerous thing to say publicly, because this might launch an arms race between both sides. Are we in that dangerous place right now where you could see an arms race between Israel and Turkey? Because I'm not sure that Turkey is regarded as an enemy in Israel. I don't think it is.
Not quite.
I think it's regarded as a problematic rival.
Absolutely.
Under the current regime, the AKP regime with Erdogan, as you mentioned, the leader there. And Turkey, up to 2006, was actually very close to Israel with a robust collaborative effort.
Oh, absolutely.
On it's a fluctuating relationship, but you're closely familiar with that relationship.
Sure. Israel until 2006, was a major strategic ally of Turkey and vice versa. A lot of not just intelligence exchanges, but also in terms of weapons. Israel upgraded the entire tanks, the armored forces of Turkey. And I believe at some point these things will come back, because if you look at the mathematics in the region, Turkey and Israel and also Persia, we have a lot in common, and Ethiopia, what used to be called the peripheral alliance that Ben Gurion back in the 50s and 60s did try and managed to establish.
Even though the Turks and the Iranians are historic rivals. I mean,
absolutely.
Turkey, as we know it today, was the Ottomans conquering Selim I, 1514, the Battle of Chaldiran.
Yes.
I think it was the 23rd of August. The victory there has allowed the Ottomans to take over Iranian territory, which is the way they see it in Iran, of Ismail Shah I, and capturing Turkey as we know it today. I mean, much of that is the rivalry it didn't start there, but
Sure.
it really manifested and festered for many, many years.
Quite right, Jonathan. You're very right in the sense that there is no lost trust or love between Turkey and Iran. However, when you look at the region, the only three countries which are not Arab countries in the region are Iran, Turkey, and Israel. So I think it's an aberration, which is, in history, 40 years is not a very long term. And we'll, of course, all eyes are focused on Tehran. We'll see what's happening there. But I think now, with Trump in the White House and really pushing changes all over, I think Israel is in a much better condition. And I don't look at Israel vis-a-vis Turkey, but mostly Israel vis-a-vis Erdogan. And as you mentioned, Turkey is not designated, not will it be designated as an enemy, and nor is it from the perspective of Ankara. Israel may be a threat, as they some of Erdogan's, I say, cronies like to describe, but not as an enemy, at least not yet.
I think we can maybe distinguish this between a risk and a threat.
Yes,
So
exactly.
It might be a risk, but it's not necessarily a threat.
Exactly.
As we
Absolutely.
speak, even though I do not necessarily think that from a threat assessment perspective, Israel and Turkey are at the same page right now.
Right. And also there is another aspect which, again, Greek and Cyprus are playing a major role, and this is vis-a-vis NATO. And it used to be that Turkey's power with NATO was much larger than it is today. But I think they made major mistakes with S-400, with trying to play footsies with Putin. They lost a lot of trust over there. They used to have the veto power against any Israeli cooperation, defense cooperation with NATO. Less so now, as NATO countries crave Israeli technology. Israeli Aero 3 systems in Germany, and probably will be into other countries, moving forward into this laser beam and many state-of-the-art defense tech. Our value, even not publicly, but our value to European countries and NATO members has increased tremendously since the 7th of October. And I think in Ankara, they pay attention to that. If you add into to this equation the gas and the energy concerns, Turkey has much more to gain by cooperating with Israel, also on the gas issues. And there was a respite in 16, about 9, maybe 10 years ago already, where Turkey tried to bring in the Israeli energy program to mesh with the Turkish one. So
Well, also in 2021, 2022,
yes, right.
There was the meeting between Prime Minister Netanyahu and Erdogan,
Right.
among others. So there have been, again, it's a fluctuating relationship. In Hebrew, we say kabdeu v'chashdeu.
Right, right.
Give them honor, but also
Right.
be very wary of them.
And trust and verify.
Trust and
Absolutely.
verify.
But at the end of the day, I think when you look at the strategic interest of Turkey, they supersede the political, let's say, or ideological ambitions of Erdogan, which may uses bashing Israel for political gains. But when it comes to Hamas, supporting Hamas and losing a lot also in the United States, or gaining a lot with cooperation with Israel on the energy side, on defense, on commerce, many, many other things, tourism. Turkey, they made billions of dollars every year from Israeli tourism, which now is zilch, nothing. All Israelis go to Greece now.
Right.
So at the end of the day, I think that reason logic interest will prevail. Turkey is not in the best economic situation, although it's better than before. But I think that we will see coming together of relationship, if not when Erdogan is still in power, certainly when he is out of power.
Right. Well, I think the elections in Turkey is in 2028. And per the constitution, even though the constitution can be amended, as was conducted by the AKP party and Erdogan back in 2017, the constitution has a term limit for president, and therefore Erdogan could lose the seat unless he maneuvers. And it can happen. I mean, they do have excessive powers these days.
Yes.
When it comes to that, I will say that NATO may be a restraining force, as you mentioned, or alluded to, which is positive from Israel's perspective and the region's perspective at that. The expansionist ideals, or before that, Turkey may be the second largest army in NATO, as second to the United States, that is, but it's not the second strongest army in NATO. Much of the money is invested in manpower, and just like the Italian military, where their GDP, much of that is basically to give jobs to Italians to be in the military. Here too, there is not the right balance of industry, of R&D, of
Sure.
development, and so on and so forth, as is necessary in a Western-oriented military as the United States, Israel, the UK, even Canada or Australia. Those militaries are built on a very specific philosophy. Many of those are too small to handle the threats emerging around the world today. But nonetheless, there is a certain effort to even and to increase.
And to compensate with technology.
I mean, much of, even during World War II, I think the Soviet military was very human-centric. The American military and the British militaries, you saw that the Allies were a lot more technological and a lot more mechanized, so to speak.
Right.
We still see that, it's a philosophical matter. But going into another point that I think is important, because from Israel is still concerned at what is happening on its northern front, particularly in Lebanon, in Syria.
Yeah.
Turkey is pushing for Syria to consolidate its power, for Damascus, that is, to consolidate its power over all of Syria, supported by the United States, despite the fact that Damascus is run by the person who established Al-Qaeda in Syria, Jabhat al-Nusra, right? He has American blood on his hands, and not even since assuming, his role as the so-called leader of the Syrian New Republic or Arab Republic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Can Israel accept such a scenario? And if so, what are the risks attached to it?
I think from Israel's point of view, I would dare say with the region point, interest is never to have Syria glued back together, which is in very, very artificial way. The seams are really not natural seams.
Right.
And at this point, I think that Erdogan prevailed over Trump, that Syria should be put together, but I don't see this is happening. I would say the Druze in the south, they have no trust, and rightly so.
I mean, they've been massacred.
Oh,
the
absolutely.
Druze and the Christians there.
Absolutely. And you don't hear about it because Israel is much more present there now in a quiet way, which is also very, very smart. But I don't think Israel is there to stay. I don't see how we can leave our allies, which are,
For security reasons.
Yeah, for security reasons. But it's more the issue of values, The brotherhood between Druze and Jews, especially here in Israel, extends over, and it will extend over the entire region as we see more changes come here. The Kurds also would love to see, owning their own destiny and not allowing somebody like a former Daesh or ISIS or Al Qaeda men controlling them, and they also have problems from the Alawites. They are still a strong allies or followers of the Assad regime, which are challenging him. So with Turkey trying their best to hold on, to let Ashara hold on to power, I think it probably, again, you cannot go over historic and natural tendencies and developments. And just as Syria was created artificially, I believe at the end of the day, we will see different regions, which at the end of the day, I think will be better for all of us, and especially for the people of Syria. The Alawis don't want to be controlled by Sunnis, and vice versa. And the same with the Kurds and Druze and whatever minority of Christians. By the way, when we mention Christians, there is a very strong Christian lobby in Washington against Turkey, because Erdogan and Turkey is doing to Christians is just abhorrent.
Yeah. Well, we're at the end of today's edition. I will mention the Christians in Syria are a persecuted minority. They are being exploited by the new regime, by the jihadists there, to make public statements that are untrue, and they do so to save their own skin, so to speak. Pastor Khalid Mazza, who was the head of, or the pastor of one of the evangelical congregations in Sweden, was butchered during the last massacre, July 15th to the 17th. And the outcry of his brothers and sisters, our brothers and sisters around the world, was limited. Even though people understand that there is a gap between interests and and freedom of worship, Christians need support of their brethren from wherever they are, and I haven't seen that enough, and I hope that will change. But this is all the time that we have for today. Ambassador Ayalon, it's always a pleasure having you.
Same here. Thank you so much.
And I'd like to immediately also thank all of you at home as well. Until our next edition from here in Jerusalem, wishing you a pleasant day.
Jerusalem Studio, now available on Spotify.